This is not the same thing as somebody being an introvert or being shy. Somebody who has an avoidant personality disorder is just fearful all the time. Hi, this is Jim Brillon. Welcome to my YouTube channel where we talk about all things mental health. Today I'm going to be talking about something that a lot of people have been interested in, which is avoidant personality disorder. I think this is something that's really misunderstood by a lot of people. Avoidant personality disorder it's one of the, they call it a cluster C personality disorder, meaning that it's characterized like other cluster C disorders by fear and anxiety. And an avoidant personality disorder is something that is pervasive in somebody's life where they just tend to avoid social interactions, anything that might lead to them possibly being embarrassed, humiliated. And that's really the hallmark of avoidant personality disorder. It's the definition is that it's a personality disorder wherein the main coping mechanism is avoidance of feared stimuli. People have often very severe social anxiety, social inhibition, and feelings of being inadequate or inferior to other people. So they tend to avoid social interaction. This is not the same thing as somebody being an introvert or being shy. An introvert is somebody who tends to like to be alone when they need to recharge their batteries. And an introvert can, at times, act like an extrovert. A shy person is just somebody who maybe is self-conscious or doesn't have appropriate social skills. But this is something very different, actually. This is something that actually causes a lot of distress in a person's life. When you look at the difference between social anxiety and avoidant personality disorder, social anxiety is mainly people that have social anxiety. They focus on the physical symptoms of anxiety, the heart racing, the fight-flight chemicals that are released in the body, and they get kind of caught up in thinking about, is that person judging me? Somebody who has an avoidant personality disorder is just fearful all the time of being embarrassed or being humiliated or rejected, and it shows up in lots of different areas in their life. Just to go through some of the criteria as far as the diagnostic manual, there are 7 different criteria, and I think you've got to have 4 or 5 out of them to be diagnosed with a personality disorder, which means that it's pervasive, that these issues affect every aspect of your life. And the first criteria is that people with avoidant personality disorder tend to avoid career opportunities that might put them in the position of interacting with a lot of people. And this often impacts their career development. They might avoid careers that might put them in a position where they might be embarrassed or rejected or not understood by people. So they kind of walk around opportunities often, and it causes a lot of distress in their life. They sometimes won't accept a promotion because that puts them in too much of a position of possibly being rejected. And it's not that they don't have talents or abilities, they do, just like everyone else, but they have this intense fear of being rejected or seen as inadequate, because that's what they tell themselves, is that they're inadequate. The second criteria is that a person with an avoidant personality will avoid interacting with other people. They don't want to get into a relationship unless they're assured that they're going to be accepted by that person. And the problem with that is that we can never really be assured of that completely. And even in a really healthy relationship where there is a high level of acceptance, conflicts can happen, and the person can feel really rejected and struck to their core by these fears of rejection and inadequacy. So they also tend to hold back in intimate relationships and often don't share vulnerability on the level deeper connection. So they might not share fantasies and dreams and beliefs that are really deeply personal to them because they're afraid that they might be either rejected or embarrassed or humiliated because of it. They also tend to be preoccupied with fears of being criticized or rejected, especially in social situations. They will often feel inhibited and preoccupied, kind of caught up in their head in interpersonal situations. So they'll hold back sharing and sometimes can appear to other people as being aloof, like they don't want to be involved when they actually do. They have a really deep desire for connection, but they're intensely fearful of it. This is something that's very different than other types of personality disorders like a schizoid personality disorder, wherein somebody really just doesn't want to be around other people. They don't have any use for other people. That's very different than avoidant personality, where the person wants to be connected to other people, but they're just scared of it. They also judge themselves as being inferior and kind of get trapped in their own head, telling themselves that they're socially inept. They might turn down an invitation to something because they think, well, why would they find anything interesting in me? How would I contribute anything to that conversation? Or, and they look at themselves as really inept. They may not be. They may actually, if they could alleviate some of their fear and anxiety, they might discover that they're actually really great to be around, and other people can perceive them when they're in a certain situation as, they can really see their positive traits, but they often can't see them themselves. And a person with avoidant personality, they tend to be very risk avoidant because they fear embarrassing themselves, or they fear embarrassing other people, that they're going to say something stupid or out of line and they're going to embarrass their partner or something like this. So inevitably they end up missing a lot of opportunities for joy and connection and also vulnerability. Some of the symptoms are social anxiety, intense social anxiety, inhibition, these feelings of inadequacy and inferiority, and tending to withdraw from other people. Now, some of the risk factors for avoidant personality disorder, unfortunately, they can go all the way back to childhood. And if you're raised by somebody who has an avoidant personality, then there can be attachment failures early in life where the child starts to develop a dismissive or avoidant attachment style. Also, emotional neglect is a risk factor. When children have been neglected or haven't had caregivers that willingly and lovingly meet their needs, they start to figure out somehow that their needs don't make sense, or that it's not safe to have needs, because when I do have needs, they're never met. So they start to kind of split in themselves. There's also a genetic predisposition, just like every child is born with a specific temperament. So here's the nature-nurture question again, like how does this happen? What's the cause of it? And it's a combination of some genetic factors and also environment. There are also some different disorders that are often mistaken for avoidant personality disorder. And some of those are things like social anxiety disorder. Social anxiety disorder is mainly about social interactions and focusing on the anxiety that comes up with it. But avoidant personality is a much more intense and pervasive, that fear and preoccupation is consistent across all aspects of their life. Like I said, schizoid personality disorder is often confused for avoidant personality, and sometimes even Asperger's or autism spectrum disorder can be confused with this, because sometimes comments might come across as aloof, or feel like you're disconnected from the person. And that's because there's fear of being connected. So often behaviors, things that happen with an avoidant personality is They might have like one person who's their person that they've learned to trust. And this is where it becomes difficult in relationships, because if that person is you, then you might feel like you're the only support for that person. And it can be overwhelming for a loved one. It's important to remember, though, that these are people that want to be connected. They want to have relationships, but they're just afraid of them. Some of the things that can also lead to avoidant personality are early shaming experiences. And this is not just somebody who's shy. They might tell themselves also that they're really awkward, or that there's something wrong with me, which is one of the ways that these fears are actually reinforced, because they develop a narrative that there is something wrong with me and I just don't measure up like other people. There are some things that can help. As far as therapeutic approaches, therapy can be helpful to overcome avoidant personality. If, like other spectrum disorders, if somebody is way on the far extreme and has personality disorder, they may be able to make some great improvements, but they may not be able to forever cure themselves, so to speak. But absolutely there is hope. And doing therapy like cognitive behavioral therapy and exposure therapy can be really helpful. Now, it might be difficult for a person who has an avoidant personality to actually enter therapy, because they might be fearful of it. They might be fearful that the therapist will reject them or shame them somehow. And often they struggle to accept a therapist's empathy as authentic. They might question whether they really see me in that light, or are they just trying to be nice? So some of the reasons that people with avoidant personality do get into therapy is because they enter therapy as a couple, part of a couple. And that somehow, and sometimes couples therapy is helpful in identifying avoidant personality. It's also something that is not instantly assessed in therapy. It might take some time to actually understand that that's what's happening, and it's not just shyness, it's not just introversion or communication deficits. Therapy that helps to help the person to overcome fear can be really helpful. Learning to identify and modify their beliefs, developing social skills, and also exposure therapy, meaning that, once you develop some social skills, that you actually go out and you try to put those into practice, and then you discover that, hey, my worst feared outcome didn't actually happen. And a big part of therapy is helping the person to see the consistency in these different behaviors across all aspects of their life, so that they can understand it as, a personality disorder. There are a lot of things that you can do to help somebody who has avoidant personality. Like I said, if you're their person and you're the one safe person in their life, they may end up relying on you for all of their social support. And sometimes that can be hard. So it's important to have healthy boundaries for yourself, and also to learn as much as you can about avoidant personality, so that you actually understand what's happening, and then you're not misreading cues. Because it can be really difficult when somebody is avoidant. They might at sometimes feel almost clingy because they're always coming to you, for support. And then at other times when they're really shamed or fearful or anxious, they might actually feel like they're pushing you away. So it can be really confusing, this the way that it's the push-pull that happens. But you can be tactful, avoid embarrassing them, and also offer to get into couples counseling with them, or family therapy as part of a family unit. I think it's important to remember that you can't fix them, and that it's not your job to try to fix them and be their therapist. And that's how sometimes people can get into a codependent relationship, where you take responsibility for another person's feelings or emotions. But support them, accept them, talk with them non-judgmentally. Mirror their positive traits, meaning, when you see their positive traits, you share them with them. And that's sometimes what happens in avoidant parents. When they don't mirror those positive traits in their children, they don't see them themselves. So pointing those out to people can be very helpful in improving their self-esteem. So you also want to validate people, letting them know that they make sense based on their thoughts, feelings, and history, that they're not crazy, that they actually make sense and they're understandable. And here's the hard part with other personality traits as well. Try not to take all of that stuff personally and make it about you. The more you can actually understand avoidant personality and not take their behaviors personally, the more you're able to understand that person and not get engaged in power struggles and unhelpful communication. Because often you will feel that push and pull. So there is help and there is hope for people with avoidant personalities. It doesn't mean that they can never get better. They actually can learn healthier coping skills, and they can learn to cope with their anxiety. Things like learning mindfulness and stress reduction, ways to cope with anxiety can be really, really helpful. So I hope that the video was helpful. If it is, I encourage you, as always, to like and subscribe and put comments in the comment section. Let me know what you think about the videos if you have questions, and what you'd like to maybe hear more about. And if you're in California, I'm doing telehealth, and if you want to reach out to me, there's information in the bio where you can reach out to me. So thanks for being here, and I will talk with you soon. Bye-bye.